I think just to begin with, I'm curious, do you remember the first time you acted in any capacity, even just fun around the house or something? And then was there a moment or an incident or something after which you knew that this was what you were going to do with your life?
I think anyone who's been the mother of children should really answer that question. I probably acted up when I was very, very young and too young to remember. But as far as doing stuff at school, I think my first memory was being a town crier in a weird sort of fairy tale fantasy. And I remember, one of the reasons I remember is there was a video of it. And I came on the middle of the stage and clashed these big cymbals and sort of announced very proudly what was about to happen, or that part of the story, just sort of moving the narrative on. But when I watched it back at the video, I did that, and then I stopped in the middle of the stage whilst the other people were coming on and just turned around and looked at it instead of getting off stage. But I think my early acting memory is probably that, and I remember it being a big hall. I can't remember where it was, but it felt big and quite scary. So yeah, I think that's honestly my first memory, although I'm often reminded of a time when I was in a nursery play and I played Joseph, and apparently, I mean, you saw a lot of clips of me getting very angry, so maybe that was a seed for it, because apparently I pushed Mary off stage because she was taking too long. And then poor Mary, whoever it was, everyone laughed. I mean, it's terrible. I haven't done that to a leading lady since. Well, Kira maybe a bit in the Imitation Game, but no, I'm joking.
Well, people may or may not know that you went and got a master's degree at the Professional Theatre of the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. I just wonder if you can talk about what the biggest takeaway from that was, and also I know often actors are asked to describe their method or their technique, their approach, and I know that you have an opinion about this, which was interestingly reinforced by one of your co-stars. So I would just like to ask you about that.
I mean, I try not to go in with one specific technique because every job is so unique in its different requirements. So there's a focus and there's an understanding and approach to work which is sort of universal. And there are givens. There are certain parameters you have to work in as an actor. Sometimes they're the hardest to maintain. Timekeeping is one of them, and I'm notoriously bad at that. And learning your lines, and I'm all right at that at times, and sometimes it can get overwhelming with, especially that clip you saw at the end. With that character, he's quite vivacious. So there are good days and bad days. But yeah, I would say that it's just, I've always felt instinctively that it would limit the range of the work that you are capable of doing if you had one method that you imposed on everybody else that you're collaborating with. And so, obviously, as a student, actually, first I got my MA at Manchester. I think it's an MA at Lambda as well, but I'm not sure. It was really a postgraduate one-year course. I'm not even sure I got an MA there. I think that was more to do with Manchester, where I did 3 years of drama. And an awful lot of plays, an awful lot of acting, but an awful lot of other things around that which fed into the acting. And I think that started my kind of understanding that it's part of a total art form. It's not just something in isolation, because I was studying, I don't know, everything from sort of post-World War II American theatre to drama as therapy in prisons and probation, to writing courses, to sort of early Russian revolutionary cinema, Russian Revolution cinema. And it just gave me appreciation of context. And I think from that, it gave me an appreciation of what the duty is to kind of, and also the enjoyment of further education as an actor to further research your role. So I went into drama school with that. And of course, at Lambda, like many drama schools, there are various approaches, very much, the inside out or the outside in. But for the first time, I realized after maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 years or something of playing all sorts of different roles, especially after my voice finally broke when I was about, 22. I played a lot of girls when I was younger. I played Rosalind and Kate. I never played Kate in Tony the Show. I played Petruchio, but who else did I play? Titania in Queen of the Fairies. That was my debut at the all-boys boarding school I went to. But I realized that I had to be a version of myself, and you can never fully escape yourself. You're always partly there. Of course you are, and you're in the limits of your own body to an extent. So it's about it's about understanding that you can do the hatbox stuff. You can have great fun doing everything from playing crap in Crap's Last Tape, aged 22, to Willie Loman rather in Death of a Salesman at 17, to Rosalind, aged 15, literally 2 years before, and have fun with that. You know, really kind of diversify what you want to try and change yourself into. But drama school taught me about just being still and centered, and having a very kind of measured approach to text, to not jump the gun, to sit in the words for longer, not jump to intuition all the time, or at least if you had that first instinct, that you could then work a long way around it to come back full circle to that initial feeling of understanding a character or a moment or an objective or an obstacle to overcome. And it employed that language. So, you know, it's all this stuff you get on acting page 1. And that was really useful, just to put the brakes on and just evaluate where I was with that, my real understanding of it, and not just skim over it, which obviously I think I probably had done a lot at school.
And have you, when you've worked with various interesting
I know,
veteran
he's trying to get me to say, when I worked with Meryl Streep, first bit of name dropping of the evening, but she and I had this conversation because I was watching her bring Vi Wesson to life, and I was going, how the fuck is she doing that? She's playing grief, she's playing esophageal cancer, she's playing the effects of the cancer drugs or not the drugs, she's playing the uppers and downers that she's taking, and she's playing everything that's been boiling in her since a child, since an abused child, being an abused child. And I just saw this actress at the height of her powers being able to play every single note of her character like not even a conductor of an orchestra, but like she was literally running around and playing every instrument. And it was really phenomenal. And I thought, how the hell did you begin? What was the first in? And did you work from the outside in this one? And anyway, we had a cigarette. It was election night, and we were chatting around the balcony. I said, I've got to ask you. It's wonderful watching you work. And how do you start? Do you have a base that you always build from? And she went, what do you mean, like a specific technique? And I went, yeah. And she went, no, I think it changes all the time. And I went, oh my God, thank God to hear someone say that, because that's what I do. That's what I'd always done. And simply for the reasons that I think it keeps you able to adapt your craft, to learn from those around you. And so, yeah, there are some jobs that are much more like the method than others. I mean, I work with Katie Mitchell in the theatre, and she provides such an intense process. You don't need to have gone to acting school in order to be able to be in one of her productions. She gives you such a kind of complex, multiply led kind of focal point to hook your character on, whether it's the temperature of the room, whether it's the sound that the neighbour's dog's just made, whether it's the memory that the photograph that's not even on the set but that you've talked about in rehearsal is giving you as you look across the room to the counter to the left of the wife you're talking to, lying about the fact that you've been fired. I mean, just all this stuff, to the point that we got to first night, and it was a real shock having an audience for a start. It was just like, that happened, and I was like, why? That's not funny, because in my mind that's something very, very different. And then once that was played in, it was wonderful. You just really had not a disregard for the audience, much though she's criticised for that. It really isn't what she's about at all. She just builds a doll's house and lifts one of the walls off. And I've always loved watching her work, and thrilled to be a part of it. And I really, for the first time in my life, didn't fear judgment on a press night. I thought, to hell with it. And that's really what it all should be about anyway. You know, you should just be committing to the work and not worrying about the perception of it. You've made that compact with the director and your fellow actors, and it's about carrying that through. And it's not just about press night, it's about building to that last performance. Every day you're making new discoveries and moving it forwards within certain confines. You're a character, you've got certain tactics you can employ to overcome your obstacles, but you can't just suddenly bring in something you could do as another character. You can't just deduce the shit out of it like Sherlock if you're someone who has a little lower IQ and is not so kind of focused as that man is. And so, you know, that was extraordinary, and I took a lot from that. And the seeds of that were in drama school, but beyond that, that was the first real calling where I went, wow, I can escape into something that's so focused that I sort of become lost in my task rather than self-conscious about what the effect of what I'm doing is going to be on an audience.
And in terms of just on a day-to-day level, what do you feel brings out the best in you? Would you be somebody who responds well to a lot of rehearsal or prefers not to? Would you be somebody who, in the case of film or TV, if you're asked to do many takes, is that something you appreciate, or sometimes people say it maybe takes some of the spontaneity out of it? Where do you fall?
I like doing a lot of takes.
Yeah?
I'm really bad at that. I'm really bad. It doesn't mean that I do a lot of good takes. It just means I like doing a lot of takes.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know, and various rhythms come in with different characters and situations. Some directors have said your third's your best. First is the warm-up, second you're getting used to it, and the third you is good, and then everything else you're trying to chase that third one. But I mean, on other jobs, it's the 18th sometimes. I can't remember what my record is. It's pretty heinous, whatever it is. As far as rehearsal goes, to go back to the first part of the question, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to film and television, it's a luxury, especially television. But it's sort of essential because you get to a point where you have some concrete grounding for what you're then stepping into, so you can tackle the day's work when there are going to be technical difficulties, running out of time, or light, or cameras not working, or whatever it may be. Then when you have to just hit the ground running, have that in you, and also you can play, you can have fun, you can evolve it because you've got that kind of bedrock of preparation, and also that you're in collaboration with everyone else you're working with. You're not on a solo flight, and that's really rewarding. And again, I suppose that comes back slightly to method. I think if I'm locked off doing my own thing, and there's certain days where you have to do that. The brig scene in Star Trek, I couldn't play Scramble with Friends with Zach and Chris. I had to go. Now I got to go into my corner and think about my shit and why that's more important than their shit. I mean, no, we just, sorry. Wow, so articulate. But it's that thing of just being in opposition to people. Sometimes you have to build a little bit of a cocoon of concentration. The second of the third series of Sherlock, I have this massive monologue in the wedding scene, and that was, it's intercut with loads of flashbacks, but it's basically a sort of schizophrenic one-man show, and we did it for 5 days, so I really had to pull myself out of any kind of jollity, of which there was a lot. I mean, an awful lot. It was great fun. They had a lot of fun without me.